we've got a packed agenda with an executive session that we had to add on. So I'm going to be moving us along a little bit more quickly than anticipated. And Council President Pro Tem is remote for the work session, but will be here for the evening meeting. With that, I'm going to call the meeting to order. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Bajent.
Here.
Clegg.
Here.
Halliburton.
Here.
Sanchez.
Here.
Willets. Woodings.
Here.
5 present, 1 absent.
Holly, Council President Pro Tem, you weren't super loud when you said that here. Just check your audio or just say something to us.
I'll put in my little
That's better.
AirPod. That should work better.
Great, thanks everybody. First up is the zoning code rewrite. Got a whole bunch of people here. Are all of you here for it? Are you going to sit here? Great, okay. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Mayor, Council. For the record, Andrea Tuning with the Planning and Development staff. I am joined by the project team for the zoning code rewrite. We have Deanna Dupuis, Lindsay Moser, as well as Lena Walker here today. We are excited to share a little bit about where we are in the process, some of the big changes that we're proposing as Module 2, and some of our community outreach efforts. We do have a presentation, if we could get that switched over. Wonderful, thank you. So as we talk about the rewrite process, just to review where we have been in 2019, we kicked off the zoning code rewrite process. And our first major item that we discussed was the diagnostics and solutions report, which talked about what we're doing well as a city and how we could be doing better to achieve some of our goals. That item was released in January of 2021. We then moved on to Module 1, where we took a look at the allowed zoning districts throughout the city, as well as the uses that were allowed. We published the draft Module 1 in April of 2001 and did an extensive community outreach effort as a part of that. And that has led us to ultimately today, where we are kicking off our community outreach effort today with the Module 2 draft, which talks about what developments look like. It talks about those development and design standards. And then from there, we will have an extensive community outreach effort of 11 events, as well as a survey, which will lead us to Module 3, which gives us a synopsis of how do those new developments get approved, who's reviewing them, and who gets to participate in that process and when. Once that's completed, we will go ahead and do Module 3 citywide outreach again. And then we'll have an opportunity to combine that document later on in the summertime for a consolidated code where we can do some testing, and we'll continue our education and our engagement throughout that period. In October, we're anticipating a consolidated code that we will be able to release again. That'll take into account all of the outreach that we've conducted through Module 1, 2, and 3. And then we are hoping for an application submittal that'll begin in November with the Planning and Zoning Commission for a formal recommendation to the City Council. And if all goes well, we should have a new code that should make a difference throughout our city by August of 2023. So we'll go ahead and talk about some of those proposed changes that we are seeing as part of Module 2, and I'll introduce Deanna Dupuis.
Thanks, Andrea. So Module 2 is a large document, and it covers the rules for how new development should look and feel across the city. So instead of going over every single change, I'll be focusing on the 8 changes that we're presenting to the community in Module 2. There we go. The first change is an update to dimensional requirements, specifically around minimum lot sizes. Our proposal recommends that minimum property sizes for a single family duplex or townhome can be built on is now smaller in most residential zones, allowing more homes to be built over the same amount of land. Smaller lot sizes encourages multiple housing types, income diversity in neighborhoods, and reduces sprawl. Boiseans will still have the option to build and live on larger lots. This change simply allows future development to fit more homes on limited land. Change 2 recommends removing the density calculation requirement for all zones. In our existing zoning code, city planners use a calculation, which is the number of units divided by the size of a property to set a maximum limit on how many residential units can be built on a single piece of property. To update the code, we propose removing this formula and instead determining the maximum number of units that could be built using design criteria such as maximum heights, required parking, minimum lot sizes, and setbacks. So this image shows a really good example where the buildings look exactly the same, but there's actually a difference numbers of units, and it's all about how the architect has designed the shape of the products, and that from the outside it looks like they're the exact same apartment, but market demand could be more units and they could still meet all the design requirements of the city. Change 3 adds neighborhood protection standards requiring transitions between zones. These protection standards create additional requirements for apartments and commercial buildings in areas next to single family homes. These protection standards seek to provide existing residents predictability about the impacts of new development. These standards hope to preserve sunlight, protect privacy, and limit light pollution through additional setbacks, reduce lighting, enhance landscaping, and the limiting of car uses near homes. Change 4 creates new zoning incentives in exchange for energy and water saving improvements. Blueprint Boise and the city's climate action roadmap have very ambitious goals for reducing environmental impacts of new development. So we're recognizing that these improvements can be costly and difficult for a developer to incorporate in certain projects. A parking reduction is a low-cost way for the city to encourage further adoption. If change 5 is adopted, most new homes will now only require one off-street parking spot instead of 2. The single parking spot can be within a garage, a driveway, a parking pad, or even a parking lot. But people can continue to have the option to provide more than one off-street parking spot if they choose. And we propose this because research has found that requirements for excess parking can result in higher real estate prices, increased car use, which contributes to air pollution and carbon emissions. With fewer minimum requirements, on-site parking, costly and land-consuming off-street parking becomes an option instead of a mandate, paid by those who use it. Oops. This is long twice. So then change number 6 ensures broadens our design requirements across the city. So instead of just applying those to parcels that are within a certain area, we believe that all areas in our city should be high quality and designed to the best standards. And so that's why we're proposing, instead of just our major streets like Vista and downtown, that all new development would be required to follow these. This would reinforce pedestrian-friendly design and create special places for all of our residents. To promote access and connectivity, we proposed a whole new section in the code that establishes standards for safe and efficient circulation for all modes of travel. This section will make progress on the goals identified in Blueprint Boise and the Pathways Master Plan, as well as the Transportation Action Plan. And lastly, we heard that our residents want to ensure operations and maintenance long after a project has received zoning approval. So our new section of the code would require those site improvements be kept in good standing for the life of a project, and it provides an accountability mechanism for our residents. So we recognize that these changes have long-term impacts, and staff look forward to hearing Mayor and Council's thoughts on how these tools can or will be improved to accomplish pressing citywide goals. And with that, Lindsay will give us a summary of what our next steps are with community engagement.
Thanks, Deanna. I'd now like to present the community engagement for Module 2 of the zoning code rewrite. We learned from Module 1 that it was important for us to focus on the quality of the conversations with the community. And if that means taking our time to come up with a strategic community engagement plan, then we should do so. Zoning is a technical and confusing topic and can be difficult to understand. So we needed to break down the zoning code and find a way to have meaningful and personal conversations with Boiseans. In anticipation of the release of Module 2, our team put together several documents that were included in your packet and that are available to the community. The first is how to read Module 2. We know that not everyone or many will pick up the 400-page document and read it from cover to cover. We created this document to be a guide for residents to use as they navigate Module 2. We provide helpful tips as well as common questions the community might ask, such as what are the parking requirements, how should a building look and feel, and what are the implications for my neighborhood. We help direct you to the specific sections where you can find those answers in the document. In addition, we recognize that dimensions are mentioned a lot throughout Module 2, and not everyone can picture what 5 feet, 20 feet, or 50 feet might look like. We put together a table that was Idaho focused, giving you references to think about. When we say 5 feet, think the length of a mountain bike, or 20 feet, think the length of a whitewater raft. We imagine members of the community keeping this document handy as they peruse Module 2 and hope these helpful tips make Module 2 seem more approachable for the community to read. The second deliverable that we provided was the executive summary of Module 2. This is really the sounding board of our community outreach. It reminds us of where we have been and where we are now, including keeping Blueprint Boise present in the conversations. We put together the 8 major changes found in Module 2 and described them in everyday language for the community to understand. We provided some context on what each of these changes means and some reasoning and guidance for each. During community outreach, covering these major changes, as Deanna just did, will be a large portion of what we're looking forward to discussing with the community. The third deliverable is the conversion map. This is an interactive map using the GIS system to navigate the entire city and see the current zones next to the proposed zones. This map is color coordinated, has a legend to view, and allows you to zoom in, type in your address, and access any address within the city. This map is also available in PDF format with a legend to use as well. Community engagement for Module 2 begins today. We'll be headed to the Central Bench at 5 o'clock and we'll run through early April. We're headed out to each of the 7 planning areas to talk specifically about the proposed changes in those neighborhoods. We're encouraging residents to sign up for their neighborhood planning area meeting. In addition, we are also hosting 4 community conversations. 2 of these events are in conjunction with housing. During our winter housing outreach, zoning continued to come up, so we thought it was appropriate to bridge the gap between these 2 topics and host them in one conversation. I'd like to highlight that these events are just the public-facing events. We have several other smaller events scheduled with more of the technical users, such as the American Institute of Architects, Urban Land Institute, Idaho Walk Bike Alliance, and others that we're continuing to schedule in the coming months. One of the biggest things we're trying to accomplish is connecting the zoning code rewrite to the larger picture of the strategic initiatives of the city and the work the city has already done. We want the community to see the connection between the pathways plan, the climate action roadmap, and our housing needs analysis, and how the zoning code rewrite connects all these to tell the story of our why in a more holistic way. We also know that Blueprint Boise is still very relevant, and we are using these principles and policies to guide these changes in Module 2. Within each of our planning area meetings, we're providing a more localized approach by showcasing a commercial and residential example that residents might recognize. Shown are 2 examples that are provided from a local architect. We'll then showcase different callouts on these examples, highlighting some of these changes, such as building height, street trees, front-loaded garages, etc. These provide an opportunity for the community to see and feel what these changes look like in their own backyards that they may recognize. The last portion of our community engagement is our surveys. We'll have 2 surveys. One is technical, that is tailored towards the people who use the code on a more regular basis, such as developers, home builders, and architects. The second survey is the community survey. We took the technical survey and broke it down into community-focused language to understand and provide feedback. The survey will also be available in Spanish. One of our strategies for getting the survey into the community and hearing from communities that we might not hear from is our survey street team that will be hanging posters all throughout the community with QR codes and links to the website to take the survey. That will also be available in Spanish. This allows us to evaluate the effectiveness of our efforts and adjust accordingly. The surveys will be open from February 24th to April 10th. In conclusion of today's presentation, here are major upcoming events and key dates. We'd like to encourage council to attend a few of these community outreach events to hear what the community is saying and feeling about the zoning code rewrite. We'll be back in front of you as a conclusion to Module 2 and on what we heard from the community. And with that, we will stand for questions and comments.
Thank you. Anybody here want to go ahead?
Madam Mayor,
Sure.
I'll start. Well, thank you. First of all, really, really great to see this moving along. I appreciate, the capacity issues and PDS and being able to move this forward, I think is really important. So thank you all very much. I think there's a lot of really good things in here, but of course, as you all know, the devil's in the details. And I have to say, I'm a little bit disappointed in the dimensional standards, especially the setbacks. And you all know well enough that many of the more controversial, but really kind of minutia appeals and those kinds of applications that we get mostly have to do with those kinds of things. And I see a lot in here that doesn't allow us to maybe make the accommodations that we've been thinking about making as we've made those decisions over the last couple of years. And I don't think it does a lot of good to get into deep specifics today, but I think just broadly, as an example, there's still a 15-foot backyard setback with no accommodation for a detached garage that might sit differently, or a detached garage that might today sit on a lot line. There's no accommodation for zero lot line, even if the full development is done that way. So you end up with 5-foot side yards instead of 10-foot side yards, for instance. And even in the although there's accommodation for co-housing and cottage, I'm a little unsure how it fits given the other dimensional standards that we're requiring. So just some of those details, I hope that over the next few months we can dig in and begin to understand. To me, the only other thing, the other thing that sort of stood out to me is that the mixed use activity centers, great idea. I'm not sure we've got the scale of those right yet. I think that there are a number of places, especially on the edge of downtown, that would be better served by more of a downtown mixed use than the activity center mixed use, or maybe something in between. So for instance, maybe take a look at that. And even the dimensional standards in the mixed use, I was surprised, for instance, to see a 10-foot to 20-foot setback, a 20-foot setback on parking, and not really understanding where that came from. So those are the kinds of things, those are the kind of details that I think will make your jobs easier, my job easier, and hopefully result in the kind of community we want. So not criticism, just saying that we need to dig into some of those details and make sure we're going to get where we had wanted to go with them.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation. As you know, we have folks who in our community are excited that we're focusing on this. And then we also have folks who are feeling some anxiety about what it means for their particular part of Boise. So a message I've received from a constituent is they're wanting specific information about how these changes might impact the overlay in their neighborhood. So they're specifically asking about the Sycamore and Big Sky overlay. They're very concerned about how these changes may affect the agricultural feel to their neighborhood. So you may want to be prepared to answer questions like that. The other was very blunt. They wanted to know what the city is paying Clarion and Associates for their consulting. So again, you may want to be prepared to answer questions like that. as you move forward into the community. And so, but I greatly appreciate that those conversations are going to happen. And I think you will have a lot of participation. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
I want to join the council president in being very grateful for this massive document that actually was the highlight of my weekend, and I spent a lot of time with it. And it really is a huge undertaking in a busy PDS department with a lot of moving pieces and a lot of community engagement. And I'm just so grateful to see the material that we got, and I'm looking forward to more to come. Some of my comments are similar to the council president's. I have some technical questions and then some broader policy questions. And but I think that, one of the important things to understand is that this is a draft, and as the engagement process goes forward, moving into module 3 and then to a final product before the Planning and Zoning Commission and us, many of these things are up for grabs. Quickly, we'll call out that I noticed the lot line issues the council president did, some other similar lot sizing issues where I think there's more work to be done with the community and with all of the various stakeholders who are interested in this. But I'm excited to dive in and help tackle those in the coming months and through the summer, because it's headed in the direction that we want it to go. The one piece of sort of additional guidance that I would offer that didn't leap out from this document to me is that we do a lot of business by exception or excusing a requirement or hearing an individual issue and then conditioning it in ways to make it work. And there were various places where I saw sets of rules that really didn't comply with our pattern and practice. Like if you take kind of together as a glob the way the city council tends to handle one-off issues, there were places that I didn't think that sort of philosophy or guidance from the past practice is reflected in the new code. And I just call attention to it because that type of issue sets us up for having to continue to treat cases as one-off cases in the future. So I have a list of those, and I'm looking forward to sitting down and talking with people about ways that I think we can make this even better. But most of all, I'm just very appreciative to see this big piece of work product coming through during a busy and difficult time. So thank you very much.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll kind of follow up on some of that excitement. It is really exciting to see this plan moving forward. And I love community outreach, and I'm excited to see kind of how that shapes some of the discussions going forward, because I think that will point us in a lot of the directions that were already identified. I do know that, that this will be the first time we'll have done a large community outreach effort in a time where some of our council members are in districts. And so I do think that we have some navigating to do to figure out how that might look. And I think that all of us as council members want to do our best to represent the entire city. But I just think that if we could get that list of dates as soon as possible over to Amanda and council leadership, it would be great to make sure that we could get council representation at as many of those as possible, while also kind of navigating the district issues and making sure that people can be at ones where they're represented. There's a few small things in there that, I'd love to kind of take a look at. The bike parking, of course, being one of them, which is tied to the Pathways Master Plan and some area where myself and some others have some expertise. But I was really excited to see it. The navigation at the beginning, I think, was helpful, kind of pointing you where to go. And I think that this outreach process is really going to help us identify some of those gaps or areas that we can, make it better.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. First of all, thank you again. I'll echo what everyone has said. This is Councilwoman Willits. This is a heck of a lot of work, and I can tell that a lot of thought was put into it. And from a communications perspective, what a great way to show the different dimensions. I really, really like that. And in fact, I have it in my binder here, and I was going back and referring to it. And I just want to give my kudos to you and how you were thinking about how to engage with the community. I have some more meatier questions that I'll reach out separately on, because we don't need to take the time in this meeting for, but I do have two overarching questions that I think will help us as a council and also the community. So the first question is, we always hear low density, medium density, high density. Is there an industry standard for that? And if there is it called out within the document? I didn't see it, but I don't have an eye for those things either. So can you help educate me on that?
Madam Mayor, Councilwoman Willetts, we did not identify a particular industry standard. We can certainly identify one for you. There are various ones that exist based on whether you are a small town, a small city, a medium-sized city. We have been looking to a lot of our similar cities that we've identified, comparing our standards to theirs, understanding what has worked and what has not. And so we'd be happy to share that information with you, and we'll gather that up and do a follow-up with you if that's okay.
That's super. That would be very, very helpful. Madam Mayor, one more question.
Sure.
All right. I'm going to echo what Councilman Halliburton said about neighborhood outreach. And I noticed that you have several community meetings. I think that's great. It's important. It has the future of Boise. And as Councilwoman Sanchez said, here's what I'm trying to understand is that it looks like the neighborhood meetings were done by neighborhood, like there's the West Bench, not necessarily by council districts. Can you educate me on how you decided where to do those meetings? And is there some previous work that you've done and that's how you've cut them up? Because I was just looking at my district and both 1 and 2 are within one meeting. So I'm trying to get a sense of kind of where people should go and how we should look at that community outreach.
Madam Mayor, Councilwoman Willetts, the way that we thought through the community outreach was divided into the neighborhood planning areas, which within there you have neighborhood associations as well. So if people aren't sure of what neighborhood planning area they live in, that's on our website as well. We provide that. And really that was the way we decided was the best way to divide the city up, and Andrea can speak more closely on this on, for example, if a neighborhood is more commonly R1C within that planning area, it's easier to talk about the potential changes within that neighborhood planning area. Andrea can fill in anything that I might have misspoken on.
No, Lindsay did a great job. We did identify the planning areas consistent with what we find in Blueprint Boise. So our comprehensive plan has those specific areas. They identify certain demographics. And so we are able to evaluate some of our other demographics as well as some of our key features and characteristics that are occurring. So we do understand that they do cross districts. And so we'd love to have you visit a district that you are in, but we'd also love you to participate in another area as well so that you can hear what's happening throughout the entire city.
Super. Thanks for the info.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Great questions by all of my colleagues per usual. And just so much work has gone into this, and I really appreciate the thoughtful community outreach, and I really look forward to what that will bring us as we move forward into the next module. I had a question regarding the slide where it had examples of different types of housing. There was one that it looked like multifamily housing, and then one that was more like townhomes. And I'm going to risk sounding like a broken record because I often talk about garage placement in fronts of homes and how sometimes, especially on the townhome one in particular, how sometimes having garages that protrude from the front face of a home will often lead to a little bit less pedestrian feel in housing. And so I just want us to be really aware of that as we're going forward with what the look and feel is of neighborhoods. If we want things to be really approachable from the street for pedestrians and bicycles, we might think about bringing doors forward and garage doors back because it does create that more walkable feeling in housing. So just something to kind of keep in mind. I think other than that, like go forth, I really look forward to what our community has to say. And I look forward to their feedback. I share Council President Clegg's concerns on the dimensional standards because those are often things that come to us for variances. I think it's important to look at what we see in variances, where we grant variances, and ensure that our new zoning code will help to minimize some of those variances coming forward, where we know how we want our land to be used. and ensure that people can do that in a little bit more streamlined way than they have been able to do in the past. So thank you so much. I think that this is really great. I'm excited to see it moving forward and appreciate your work.
Well, thank you all. I'm going to recommend taking the feedback that you got today, and it sounds like several council members would like to have further discussion with you to get into some of the nitty gritty. So if anybody on council wants to do that, let's work to reach out to staff so that that's done in a way that is coordinated and organized. And then you'll also be sharing the schedule through the council office with the outreach dates. Great. Thank you
Madam
all so
Mayor,
much.
Could I suggest one
One
thing?
more thing. Yeah.
So City Council has recently reformed the growth management team. I'll make a suggestion that those of us on the team collect comments from our fellow council members and try to work through that process with staff on some of these details.
And who's
Maybe
on that
that'll
committee?
Streamline it a little.
Who's on that committee?
Councilmember Bajet and myself.
Gotcha. Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
All right.
Next up, Neighbors United.
How's that? Okay. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to have us here today. My name is Holly Beach. I represent the Idaho Office for Refugees and also Neighbors United. And we're here just to share with you about Neighbors United and updates and some exciting initiatives that we have in the works. So what Neighbors United is a collaborative network across Boise that's sponsored by the Idaho Office for Refugees and the city of Boise. And we've been going strong for over 12 years now. The mission of Neighbors United is to envision and empower Boise as a diverse, inclusive, and equitable city in which all residents have an equal voice. So just a brief look at who Neighbors United is. We're made up of dozens of organizations and many, many people and leaders in this city. That includes resettlement organizations such as my office and our 2 resettlement agencies in Boise, International Rescue Committee and Agency for New Americans. That also includes people who came to Idaho through the Refugee Resettlement Program. It includes several civic partners such as the libraries, Valley Regional Transit, Ada County, the city, businesses, hospitals, nonprofits, and community volunteers, and many more. So just a quick look at how Neighbors United started. So refugee resettlement has been a heritage for Idaho, for our state, and for Boise for almost 5 decades now officially. But around 2008 and 2009, when the Great Recession hit, we had challenges, obviously, fewer job opportunities, lagging resettlement funding. And so people who work in resettlement and stakeholders got together to say, what capacity can we support as a city of new refugee arrivals? So that's in the city of Boise, and the Idaho Office for Refugees really gathered a lot of stakeholders and organizations and community members, looked at the resources that we had available, had listening sessions, focus groups, assessed the needs, and created a strategic plan to work from. So I don't expect you to read all of these, but I really wanted to give you an idea of just how wide the scope of Neighbors United is. This represents people who are represented in our network. So you have from health to transportation to faith groups to nonprofits, housing, transportation, just a lot of really amazing, smart people. And the way that we work together is we have task force that meet periodically. We have monthly communications all together and are just always in tight communication as a network. So the goals of Neighbors United is to strengthen the supports for refugee resettlement in the greater Boise area, and also to make sure that everyone involved is informed and aware of best practices and perspectives. The whole mindset of Neighbors United is, take an area that might be viewed as a scarcity area and really say, when we all come together and are creative and collaborate, there is abundance here. Like, we can make this work, not just for refugees, but for every Boisean. So Neighbors United is built on 5 pillars. That's housing, education, healthcare, employment, and connectivity. And by connectivity, I don't just mean getting around, but really feeling connected in your new community like you belong. So these are just some brief highlights over the years. In each pillar, some of the progress that Neighbors United has made. Housing is our big focus right now, and in a few minutes you'll hear from our Housing Task Force Chairman, Joel Ryman. We have some exciting updates there to share with you. But also, getting involved with the K through 12 schools here, offering trainings to teachers, helping parents who came through the resettlement program feel informed and empowered and connected, and also working alongside students, and also helping adults who want to advance their education and their careers, guiding them on the new process here and their new community. In the healthcare realm, some important highlights are interpreter development among healthcare providers. Also, for a time, there was a curbside care van that brought care directly to people. In more recent years, that's looked like a mobile vaccine clinic. We've partnered with St. Al's, Injury Care EMS, and others to bring COVID vaccines to people's neighborhoods, or just to answer their questions if they're not ready yet. In the job section, we've worked with Idaho Department of Labor and others to offer apprenticeship programs. CWI has been an amazing partner to offering training that is language focused and job training focused at the same time. In the transportation sector, Village Van has been an initiative to work with employers so they're contracting a bus to get their people out to their business. That's happening in CUNA right now, for example. So as I mentioned, we've held at least 9 mobile vaccine clinics that have gone to people's neighborhoods and provided education as well as COVID and flu vaccines. And with schools closing throughout the pandemic, we have also sponsored youth programs to make sure that kids still have the support and mentoring that they need. Over the past year, Idaho has seen an increase in new arrivals, and many have come from Afghanistan, where they had to suddenly up and leave their lives. And so the Boise community has really come together to support and care for them. That may look like a warm meal facilitated by City of Good and local restaurants. It may look like a trip to the zoo, a trip to the botanical gardens, just something to say, we know this is a really hard time and we care about you as a human, and we can still be together, play together, even during all of this. So I want to introduce Joel Ryman. He chairs our housing task force. And Joel used to be, I know Joel when he was the men's basketball team captain at NNU, when he played with my brother. And I have to say he carries that same energy to what he does on our housing task force. So I'm excited to introduce Joel Ryman.
Holly, before we leave you, I just want to say thanks for all you're doing. And my head was still in the last item when you jumped up. So I apologize for not saying more at the beginning when you started chatting. Really appreciate the partnership and the leadership that you and Neighbors United have shown throughout the last 2 years in particular, because it's been tough. But in general, as we've created a more welcoming city in partnership with so many organizations. And it's been the work that you and your team have done has been recognized as it should be. And I just want to acknowledge the impact that you've had and the importance of the partnership that we share.
I want to piggyback on that. Holly's been incredible. You're just so grounded. You have such a powerful voice because you see the whole thing. I'm Joel. And I'm honored to get to represent the voice of, our little committee. And I hope to just embody the heart of what our message has been and our effort. Really practically, there's, just for the sake of time, there's really two words that come to mind that I believe embody this effort. The first being creativity, and the second one being hospitality. So this is my first season being with Neighbors United, and I'm not blowing it out of proportion. It's significantly impacted me. And so with that momentum, we've just tried to streamline the effort to get people housed with our current crisis of having 200 plus Afghans in hotels rooms with babies coming back to hotel rooms. The issue's real. And so we didn't want to mess around. And so we created a website that would hopefully become a container, a landing place called houseyourneighbor.org that could be a funnel ultimately. It's a really simple framework, but on it, there's more or less a menu of creative options for people to engage. And we believe that it's going to take creativity for us to solve this problem, not just in the immediate, but ongoing. And so if you go there, you'll see, menu items from being a landlord to a co-signer to do you have land? Are you willing to give us land? Down the line to, are you willing to be a friendship partner and engage relationally? We want, it's going to be, and I'm sure there are more options than that we need. And so what we've hoped is to breathe on the conversation with story and with hospitality. And so that's been really what our team's effort has been, is to find, whether it be faith groups, neighborhood associations, leadership, Boise, you name it, anybody who will listen, is to enter into the conversation, to bring education of what's happening currently, but ongoing, and then ways for them to have empathy stirred, compassion stirred, right? And us to enact hospitality as every person is deserving to receive. And so it can sound up in the clouds, but with the website and just the team, there's actionable ways for people to engage. So that's taken us into congregations and the likes to have this conversation. And we hope to have many more going forward to be able to articulate this with people who have come as refugees and can speak into the heart of that. So we're really optimistic, even looking at, the current situation, which is somewhat dire. We just absolutely love your participation in it and your support. And we won't stop until we get everybody housed. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank you, Joel. And something that's really impressed me about the Housing Task Force is the range of creative conversations that we've been able to have with not just faith groups, but a ton of community members reached out to us in August, September, when they saw what's happening in Afghanistan, wanting to help. And then at that compassion momentum has just kept going forward. So there's also strategic talks going on with property owners, developers, thinking big picture going forward. So thank you for your work on that, Joel. Next, I wanted to introduce my colleague, Weiss. Weiss is a case manager at the International Rescue Committee here in Boise, and he himself knows what it's like to come to Boise and resettle as a refugee. And now he, in turn, helps others who are going through that process. So I wanted to give him a chance to share his story with you.
Thank you very much. Hello, I'm honored to be here with you guys. And so thanks for the opportunity given to me. Thanks, Holly, for inviting me right here. So my name is Weiss Mohammed, last name Arab. I'm originally from Afghanistan. And so I used to work with the military in Afghanistan for 12 years with US forces and its allies. Started working from 2006 until August 2019. So then I've got my SIV, which is Special Immigrant Visa. So was offered by the military. Then I moved on September 2019 to Boise with my 4 kids and my wife. It's been almost 3 years. We're residing here at Boise, which is a great place. And so we all love it. And I work with IRC as a caseworker. It's been 3 months. And exactly, it was the right time. It was needed for me to be there since we are overwhelmed. So we have a lot of new arrivals from Afghanistan. So what happened on August 2021 with Afghan parolees who are coming into the United States, and we have seen a lot of them here in Boise. So I'm really thankful and appreciate all the community members that they're involved in helping all the refugees, because it's going to remind me the days when I was here in Boise on 2019. So me, my 4 kids and my wife, because we had a really bad situation in Afghanistan since I have helped the military, because I had really bad days. I was unwelcome in my own community with my 4 kids. And so since we moved here at Boise, as soon as the plane landed, I talked to my wife, and now, Joe, feel free. It's your opportunity. Go for it. There is no fear. No one is coming knocking the door, and no one will run after us to assassinate or kidnap us. So when we got here, we were like kind of lost because we didn't have anything. But we did receive a lot of support from the community and from the resettlement agencies, including housing, donation, school enrollment, medical screening, peer support to the community, and a lot of things. So that's outstanding. That's great. And I can see it so far, which really helps our newcomers and gave them encourage to be self-sufficient, as I can see nowadays, and it's getting more and more from the community. All of our newcomers here are really happy and enjoying from the life. I do really enjoy my working with them, because since I'm providing services and since they don't know the language, it's a language barrier, and resettlement agencies, all the community members, anyone that they're involved, helping all the newcomers and refugees. So that's a great thing. I really appreciate it. And so that's all what I had. Thank you very much.
Well, Weiss, thanks for being here, and thanks for the sacrifices that you and your family made
Thank
to
you very
help
much.
those of us that are here. Really, really appreciate that. How old are your kids?
The oldest is 11, a boy. He's at 5th grade at Whittier Elementary School. I have 3 daughters, age 9, 7, 5. Youngest, she goes to Madison Child Center. The other 2, 3rd grade, 1st grade, and 5th grade. So they're really happy since they got here. So they can, be happy. And it's all because, so we have received incredible support from the community, and I can see it right now. So which made me to join IRC and to be involved with a lot of people to get their attentions and helping those newcomers since they had a trauma, culture shock. And so that's, the great. I think it's in all over the US, but I can see here in Boise, the people are nice, the people are friendly, and they're great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to just quickly give you a look at some trends in Boise so that you get a better idea of kind of the current refugee population that came within the last 5 years. So just to recap, 1975 was the year that Idaho's resettlement program officially launched. And we can see how this program has strengthened our state and our city through the skills and innovation that's coming through, the relationships, the friendships, the culture and diversity. It just builds a stronger community all around. In the last 5 years, Congo or DRC has been the top country where people have resettled in Idaho from. We have seen lower resettlement levels statewide recently due to administrative changes and to COVID, but now that's back, getting back to our historic norms, thankfully. If you look at language trends in the last 5 years, you can see that Pashto and Dari are big on there. That is from the arrivals from Afghanistan, and the other 3 are from arrivals from African countries. So in the year ahead for Neighbors United, our top focus areas will be housing, healthcare as we continue to respond to the pandemic. We are planning a community conversation around vaccines and then having a clinic after that in March. And connectivity also, helping new arrivals be able to feel connected, empowered to get to their new job, empowered to get to where they want to go, and to pursue the kind of job and education they want, and make those relationships within the community. A big part of this is our upcoming Idaho Conference on Refugees. So that's happening at February 28th and March 1st. You're all invited to come if you would like to, but we really do bring community stakeholders together and anyone interested in resettlement to have workshops, interesting presentations. It's a great time to connect and learn from each other. I wanted to point out some things that are working well, and in large part because of the city's leadership. So Boise Police Department for many years has had a refugee liaison officer, currently Officer Jessica Narr, which couldn't love her more. She's so supportive and incredible and helpful. So that model is very positive. Also, I know in the past, refugee students have been invited to participate in civic programs, such as Parks and Rec programs, I think at the mayor's office, if I remember correctly. Things like that are very empowering and helpful. The recent work to look at affordable housing, ease restrictions on ADUs, those things have been a positive direction. Also, the city's financial support for VRT. VRT is vital for people when they get here to get to work, to get around. It takes a while to get your license, to afford a car. So that's a very important resource. And just, I know that many of you have come to our events, World Refugee Day and our conference and others, and that does mean a lot. And the city's sponsorship of Neighbors United continues to be a vital partnership. And also I saw that you're hiring a language access program manager, which maybe you already had one, I don't know, but that's great. I was really happy to see that, and we're really excited to get to know that person. So in all of this, we have to keep the why in front of us. And it really is our goal as Neighbors United that what we build together will strengthen opportunities, not just for refugees, but for everyone who calls Boise home. So with that, we're happy to take any questions you might have.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Holly. That was a very inspiring presentation. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the perspective of Mr. Mohammed. And I think it's something that is vital as we move forward in our community and we make space for more people, whether they come from Afghanistan or they come from California. That attitude of knowing what it's like to enter a space or enter a new community and not perhaps to immediately feel at home. And what you do is you hold on to those experiences, those people who put forth the effort to make us feel welcome. And so I just want to thank you, not just for helping Boise have that reputation, but also to provide the example for folks who come to our community and to recognize that that is the type of community they're entering and what it means to actually be a refugee. People throw around that term lately in a way that's very flippant. And I very greatly appreciate Mr. Mohammed sharing the reality of what is behind that term. And I am so very grateful that he and his family are a part of our community.
Thank you,
Madam Mayor.
I heard somebody, go ahead.
Madam Mayor, I just want to echo my thanks for all that you do for the refugees in our community and for making this a place to call home. Refugees, obviously, as Councilwoman Sanchez alluded to, have gone through a lot of trauma and they're making new life. And it's something that is helping those folks has been something that's been really important to my family and myself, because we have found that our association with people who are different than us has really enriched us. And we've had the opportunity to have refugees live in our neighborhood. And it's been a phenomenal opportunity to get to know a situation that we were pretty oblivious to. So thank you. I have a question. What can we do to help you? You know, you've given us a lot of great information and there's a lot of work that's going on. But if you could wave your magic wand, what would you do? How can we help you?
Thank you, Councilwoman Willis, for your question, and Madam Mayor. I do have some colleagues here, so if anyone would like to speak, I welcome you to join me up here.
And we've got about 5 minutes.
That's a great question. Honestly, as we're in the conversation with finding units, if we had a magic wand, it would be direct contact, relationship bridge to property managers, people that we could be in real-time conversation with about the situation, and then how we're supporting, those who will be there, the applicants or renters. There's a big game plan there, but oftentimes people aren't given the chance to even apply, partly because there's not a need, and because they don't have credit history, any litany of numbers of things. So being able to have contact with the right people who have sway in some of these areas, and we're working on that. But perhaps your network, those you might know, and then even bridges into your community, whether it's your faith community or it's your neighborhood association, those types of people in those positions could really, continue this conversation. But our hope is that it's not just people who have influence, it's everybody. Everybody needs to be a part of the conversation. And so that's what our effort has been. That would be my magic wand.
I wish you had a
Yeah, I do too.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes. We've got time for 1 or 2 more comments.
Great. I'm so glad that this group could come today. Some of our staff gets to work with this group relatively closely. I've had the privilege to be the council liaison to this group for the last couple of years, and Boise really has led the way in refugee resettlement in this state. And I know one of the things that this group is hoping to do is to be able to make similar presentations to other cities and other councils who might be considering some of the same work that we are. And so if our council members have feedback, or if our staff has feedback for this group on other presentations that they might be able to make in other places, that's certainly something that we can be thinking about. And I would just relay one more thanks to this group. I think we can all remember how scary it was to navigate the COVID pandemic at the very beginning, when so much information was coming so fast. And you can just imagine navigating that if English wasn't your first language. One of the real successes of this group is that they're able to identify the problems that our community has and work with some of the people who are facing the most barriers, culturally, language-wise, transportation, you name it, and helping overcome those barriers. This group got 67 people vaccinated in one day at Civic Plaza Apartments. And that wasn't just the refugee community, that was everybody at that apartment complex that was facing barriers. So as they broke down those barriers, that was able to translate to benefit everyone in our community and ultimately saved lives. So I just want to say thank you one more time for the important work that this group does. And if we have ability, other council members, other folks to give them input on how they can relay this message to other leaders, I think that would be tremendously helpful.
Thank you. Well, thanks so much for being here today. Really appreciate it. And thanks all of you for coming as part of the presentation. Really good to see you.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity and for all you do.
Thank you for being here. I'll follow up afterward.
Okay, next up we have, did I see Jen walk in? Jen Hensley, welcome. And it looks like that might be Wesley Yost back there. Wonderful, welcome, the Downtown Boise Association. Let's see, is that one shared already? Okay. And while you're setting up, I mentioned at the beginning, we're trying to move things along a little quicker than planned just because we ended up having to add an executive session to the agenda.
It's just on that little drive and I don't know how to find that little drive. Absolutely, we'll be short.
For those of you waiting online, we're just trying to turn on the slideshow.
Madam Mayor, while
Yeah.
Jen's getting that set up, can I just give a couple of comments?
Of course.
Real
please do.
quickly. So as the Downtown Boise Association liaison for City Council, I was able to participate in their strategic planning process. Gosh, I can't even remember when it was. It seems like everything just runs together these days, but it was very well run. They had a lot of wonderful input and engagement from board members who are business owners all over downtown, folks who work downtown, and folks who use downtown. And so I'm really excited that Jen's here to give this presentation. I think that everyone will find the vision for our downtown to be inspiring. And I'm not gonna steal Jen's thunder, but just wanted to set it up that way. And I'm grateful that we could give her this time.
Yes, it's great to have her. I'm wondering if we could get somebody from the IT.
We got it.
Oh, we got it. Never mind. Okay.
Yay. All right. Thank you. Okay, short people.
Did we hit
Hello.
share?
Hello.
Great. Okay, there we go.
All right.
Welcome. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us. We've got a lot going on. And so just wanted to introduce myself. I think I know most of you, but I'm Jen Hensley. I'm the Executive Director of Downtown Boise. And I've got Wes Joseph with me. Wes is our current president. Hello. I'm just here today to kind of share what we have been doing, what happened in 2021 at the organization, a few new developments and some feedback we got on those, and then just a quick glance at what's to come this year. And a note that this year is the 35th anniversary of Downtown Boise Association. So in 2021, we were able to hold all but 2 of our events, those 2 being kind of our largest, most free-flowing events with free attendance. So we also supported Boise on the Block and maintained all of our clean and safe efforts while promoting downtown as a destination. A few numbers. In 2021, we hung 824 banners, planted 534 flower pots, and sold over $407,000 in downtown gift cards. So that was over a 25% increase in 1 year. And what we generally saw was an outsized community response to all of our promotions. What I mean by that is sales were up in our businesses. People really went to dine out downtown. They were excited about First Thursday. There were just a lot of people out and really invested in the local portion of our downtown. Like that was really a thing that drew them in. We had 3 new developments in 2021. What we called supersized First Thursdays. The Downtown Boise Foundation, we have a new 501c3, which will hold our free to attend public facing events. And we have a new board adopted strategic plan that is a 3-year plan from 2022 to 2025. Supervised First Thursdays, I hope some of you saw these. These ran from May to September in 2021. This was our answer to not being able to do a Live After 5 or the car show. Instead of our traditional First Thursday where the businesses are the only attraction, we added up to 7 roving musicians, dancers, performers, painters, all sorts of performances and artists per evening. And these were such a success. We had a really good response to them. So we're going to be able to continue them in 2022. We don't know which months yet, but we have a new sponsor and so we're excited. I should note that supersized First Thursdays were made possible by Arts and History in 2021.
Jen, I was there in that alley when she was dancing, and it was a really incredible experience to see the Boise Phil. And it was about, what was it, LED or?
It was some dancers from the ballet.
From ballet, yeah. Come together, and then to watch the public just gravitate to the alley to watch. Those were really well done events.
There was a magical moment at that one when a viola player looked at a dancer and said, "I can play Star Trek. Can you dance to it?" And the dancer said, "Sure." And they just went for it and people were captivated. It was wonderful. So we also now have the 501c3. So DBA is a 501c6, a membership-based organization, which doesn't allow us access to many grants and corporate giving. So now we have the C3 that will run our public-facing events, giving us access to those grants and corporate giving dollars. Because one of the things that we heard in the strategic plan, as I'll mention next, is really that the community wants us to mature and up the quality of our events as our city grows. All right, the strategic plan. We're really excited about this. As Holly mentioned, it was a really in-depth process. We kicked it off in June of 2021. We were purposeful in building the project team around this for the strategic plan. We had an artist and arts advocate on the team, a younger Boise native with ties to Boise State, a downtown restaurant and bar manager, a small business owner in the Bath community, and then a couple of professional representatives. And then the larger team was all of DBA staff and all of our board members. A quick overview of the process. In July of 2021, the project team released a survey. We were really surprised when we released this survey. We hoped to get 1,000 responses. We pushed really hard. We got over 2,600 responses from people in the community, and all of those people spent over 12 minutes on this survey. So we captured an audience. They had something to say, and we have 437 pages of open-ended comments as a result. Through a board retreat held in September, we then developed 5 goal areas with related projects or actions directly referencing the survey responses. And the plan has continual evaluation and continuous improvement measures. We built some working groups. We're really pushing towards this new vision. And then the Downtown Boise Association Board adopted this plan in October. And so we kicked it off this January. You can find it on our website if you're interested too. One of the things we did with this was adopt a new vision. And we spent a lot of time on this, but we adopted downtown Boise as a place to explore. Find a new adventure, spark creativity, make connections, and be a part of Boise's vibrant culture where all are welcome. Every word in this is purposeful. And that shortened first statement is intentional in the sense that we really wanted to capture the place where downtown Boise sits. The feedback from open-ended comments, I specifically wanted to share this with you all because there's quite a bit in here that definitively crosses the line between downtown Boise and city and all sorts of organizations. I won't read these word for word for you, but we heard a lot about transportation and infrastructure around bikes, taller buildings, people. We had quite a few comments about people who don't want one-way streets anymore. They want two-way streets. They want to be able, a lot of focus on pedestrian and biking and less focus on cars. Many comments on affordable housing and affordability in general. Hundreds of comments about 8th Street. And I can distinctly say that I did not see one single comment from anybody about them wanting it reopened. Of course, we saw comments about the way it looks or the way that they wish there was more of it. We also saw lots of comments about more parklets. We know this, but everybody was outright very excited about this project. There was also a common thread asking for quality and originality. I distinctly remember one of the comments in there said, there's a lot that goes on downtown, but how much of it actually feels like something that's happening in Boise and not something that happens anywhere? And, one of the things we heard too was kind of this focus towards the people of downtown and continuing to bolster local businesses, locally owned businesses, the people behind those locally owned businesses. And of course, continue our work to keep downtown clean and beautiful. And then if we looked at the improvement notes, internally for our organization, there were a lot of comments about people not knowing quite what we are or what we do. So we took that in. There was a desire for more variety in our downtown, retail, restaurant, services, establishment, entertainment, more activities that are family friendly, have live music, hands-on components, and cultural offerings. And then there were quite a few comments saying, while we grow and as we change, we have to keep an eye towards accessibility and mobility issues. And so we have all this feedback. We're really excited. We've got a lot going on. So I just wanted to quickly share what's happening this year. We, of course, will keep COVID-19 in our minds. The health and safety of our community is first priority, but we're hoping to bring back all of our events this year. Last year, as I mentioned, the only ones we weren't able to do were Alive After 5 and the Father's Day Car Show, our biggest, but we hope to bring those back this year while we're also supersizing First Thursdays. And then we have something that we might be announcing for the holiday season we're very excited about. We just can't quite talk about it yet. So there's a lot going on. That's it. That is what I have.
Jen, I'm curious, thanks, by the way, and it's really good to know and great to hear that the events are coming back. And I really appreciate the attention that you and your organization have given to keeping everybody safe. My sense downtown and from talking with merchants, and you touched on it, is that they've done okay, and we've stayed busy. And I've noticed there are more days during the week where, we're a reservation downtown now that we weren't before, but all that is kind of qualitative, experiential. I'm wondering if you have data or feedback from our businesses about how this last year looked compared to pre-COVID, or they could compare it to last year too, if they wanted to. I'm just curious about the numbers.
So I have a lot of anecdotal information. We're actually collecting data right now for State of Downtown.
You are? Okay, great.
But I will say one restaurant, the restaurants and bars in downtown, the folks who have a strong dinner or bar scene in general, and I'm specifically speaking generalities here, are doing pretty well. The coffee shops, the lunch places are still lacking because of the lack of office workers, our bodegas, those sorts.
Yeah.
And then there's just very specific retail that maybe is doing okay, but not as good as they normally would, because again, they rely upon an office worker or a person who is dressed not in a work from home way.
Yeah.
But we've gathered a few comments, and most of the retailers I have talked to, it's been interesting. And 2020, they might have done okay. And the uptick in online sales might have offset or partially offset what they lost in person. In 2021, they've seen a decrease in online sales, but a increase in in-person sales that more than makes up for it. This holiday season was especially good down here. I have a business down here, a retail business that's been around for 20 something years, who told me that Small Business Saturday in 2021 was the busiest day they had ever had.
Wow.
And we've had multiple businesses tell us that 2021 was better than 2019.
Okay. Wonderful. Thanks for that.
Madam Mayor.
Um,
Go ahead.
Jimmy, Councilmember Halliburton, I'll have you go after the council president.
Thank you. So Jen, really excited that you guys got the strategic plan finished and that you're going to bring back the events. During that planning period, was there any discussion about balancing Union downtown? And is there anything more that we should be aware of as a city that may be coming
before that late night time? I know that we've had a few comments about sound levels at Alive After 5. We are addressing those this year. But I would say that outside of that, we haven't really addressed the impact to residents. We did get a small amount of residents that responded to the survey, and we do keep in contact with DVNA. So we'll keep talking to them.
Councilmember Halliburton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Jennifer, for the presentation. Congrats on the strategic plan. That's huge. And then 2,000 people, over 2,000 people in a survey is just absolutely incredible and really probably pretty valuable. And I'm wondering, and if you don't have time for it right now, we can talk later, but if there's any key things that we could pull transportation related, I think would be super, super helpful for some of the city's efforts going forward and some of our partnering agencies' efforts as well. And so if there's information that you got from the survey specifically about transportation and parking and that type of stuff, it would really, really be great for us to be able to work with you in using that data.
Jimmy, I'd be happy to pull a report. I have, again, a lot of overarching themes, which I shared, but I would be happy to pull a report of specific comments and kind of any directions that we heard within there.
That would be great. Thank you.
It looks like that's it for now. We really look forward to experiencing these events this summer.
Yes.
To hearing when you're able to about the announcement for next year.
Yes.
So glad you were able to make it. Thank you
Yeah.
for all you're doing
you.
for downtown. And we have one final item before exec. Kyle, thanks for coming in. The innovation and performance update.
Madam Mayor, council members, good afternoon. My name is Kyle Patterson with the Mayor's Office. Thanks for having me this evening. So innovation and performance has been around as a body of work in the city of Boise since around 2016, but that work has really evolved over time. And so I worked really closely late last spring with Chief of Staff Courtney Washburn to re-envision what is innovation and performance in Boise to make sure it better aligned with our organization needs and goals, but also with best practices from other communities. So today I want to spend some time just kind of defining what is innovation and performance. What do I mean when I say innovation and performance? And then I'm really excited to share with you some of the projects I've worked on and completed over the past 6 months or so, and then also some upcoming projects I have in my pipeline over the next 6 months. So I know both innovation and performance can sound kind of like buzzwords, but really dozens of cities have been doing innovation and performance for the past 15 or 20 years. And before I came to Boise in 2017, I worked for the city and county of San Francisco for a number of years doing this work. So this is innovation and performance is neither unique to Boise, nor is it a new thing, right? Which is great because it's tried and true at this point. We know it impacts organizations in a really positive way. But what is innovation and performance, or what are innovation and performance? I went back and forth about whether that should be an is or an are, so I'm going to stick with is. They're two separate functions, but that are highly interconnected. So innovation is based on this idea that, of course, as an organization, we should be pursuing best practices. We should be pursuing evidence-based policy. We should be doing things that we know that work wherever we can. But also we have to acknowledge that cities are increasingly tackling more complex challenges, things like housing affordability, things like climate change. These are challenges that nobody has all the answers to, right? And so in those spaces, it's really incredibly important that we carve out some space, some time, some resources to try new things, and even to try things that might not work, but could be game changers, that could be transformative. And I think one example of this is in our climate action roadmap, which charts the path to having our community become carbon neutral by 2050. There's a lot of great actions and strategies in there, but it also has a chapter devoted to innovation, because I think it understands that we know how to get most of the way to that goal, but we're not going to get all the way to that goal unless we try new things. But because we're trying things that might not work, it's also really important that we try things in the right way, right? That we find low cost, low risk ways to test things. So rather than spending a year and $500,000 trying to get a program perfect and then launching it and hoping it works, hoping people actually want to do it, I'd much rather spend a day and $50 creating a simple prototype, getting feedback from residents and iterating on that and learning from that so that we can get to a point where we have enough information to say, hey, this idea is a good idea. And I think if we launch it, it'll work. And then finally, if innovation is Kyle sitting in his office coming up with harebrained ideas, then we've really failed. I really believe in people-centered innovation. So how can we harness the smarts, the creativity of our staff, of the community to solve problems together? And then the performance analytics side is really based on this idea that we should be using data to get better as an organization every day, right? And to do that, we have to first have a clear and shared definition of success. So what are our goals? What are we trying to achieve? What would good performance look like? We have to have easy access to data that tells us how we're doing. How are we performing relative to those goals we've set for ourselves? And then we have to use that data to take action, right? If we're seeing areas where we're not achieving the outcomes we want to see, we need to take action to get better. And there are, those two functions are really intertwined well, because any good innovation work requires a lot of data and a lot of measurement and a lot of metrics, right? As you're trying and testing new things, you really have to integrate data to understand the problem, to see if something's working. So innovation and performance can vary a bit from city to city. but there's some common sort of approaches that cities use. And those are in the bullet points at the bottom of the slide. I don't have time to go over all of them, but I want to highlight the bolded ones because those are areas where we've done work over the past six months. So human-centered design is using techniques like ethnographic interviewing and observations and prototyping for co-design. So what I mean by co-design is really deeply engaging residents in every step of the solutions process, from understanding the idea to generating new ideas to testing those ideas. Process innovation uses tools like Lean and Six Sigma. And typically how that works is you train and coach city staff in those tools and methods, and then you empower them to make small innovations in their day-to-day work. So things that might cost no money, that are really easy to do, they have control over, that each little innovation might not have a huge impact. But if a lot of people are doing a lot of innovations, then it can have a huge impact. Denver was the first city to launch a program like this. And over the past 10 years, I think they've saved the city about $50 million, 50. So we know this work is impactful. And then innovation challenges are about collecting new ideas from the organization or the community. So typically you will put out a challenge or a problem statement like, how might we encourage folks to use alternative modes of transportation? You collect ideas and then usually have a pot of money set aside to pilot some of the best ideas. And then on the performance analytics side, you have performance management, which is the backbone of this work, which is that piece about setting goals, measuring progress, using data to take action, open data, which is very much about transparency and sharing our progress towards goals with the community, and then data academies, which are focused on skill building around this to make sure our staff have the skills they need to do this work. All right, so an update on some of the innovation work I've been doing. I think many of you know, over the past year or so, a group of 10 city staff have participated in the Bloomberg Harvard Innovation Program with a focus on housing affordability. So that group interviewed dozens of residents, from people experiencing housing instability or homelessness, to developers, to business owners, to nonprofits, to really understand the problem of housing affordability from their perspective. We held several co-creation sessions, in which we invited residents to come brainstorm ideas with us. And we got more than 500 ideas through that work. And then we tested a few of the most promising ideas alongside residents. And based on that work, the city is planning to pilot a couple of housing programs that I'm really excited about. The first one is around movable tiny homes. So these are really small, under 400 square feet. They're on a trailer so they can be moved from one site to the next. You've probably seen them on Instagram or any number of cable television shows. And they're not currently allowed in city limits unless you're in an RV park. And so the idea we heard from the community was, could this be a viable low-cost housing option? What if the city did allow them? And so the plan for the pilot is to allow them temporarily at 5 or 6 locations throughout the city, and then evaluate the impacts to see if they work, right? What do neighbors think about it? Are they actually low cost? How do homeowners feel about having somebody living in their backyard? And the second pilot we're doing is around accessory dwelling units. These are also called in-law units or granny flats or casitas, up to 700 square feet. And they are currently allowed in city of Boise limits. But the idea the community had was, well, what if the city offered a package of incentives and assistance to homeowners to build an ADU in their backyard? So if we make it really cost effective and easy to do that, but then require that those homeowners rent it out at affordable rates for a period of 10 years. And so we are planning to pilot that as well at 10 or 12 sites around the city. Next steps there, we did a round of community conversations in November and December. And one of the things I really like about this approach is that you get really good ideas that could have impact, but because it's so people-centered, you're getting ideas that the community is really excited about. And we saw that in the community conversations. Our virtual session had like 80 RSVPs. Our 2 in-person sessions were sold out, and we got a lot of really, really positive feedback. People are really excited that we're doing this. We are planning to fund an organization to manage the 2 pilots. So we have a request for proposals out on the street, and that's due February 23rd. And our hope is in March, we'll select that organization and they can start work immediately. And then based on the success of that Bloomberg Harvard work, Public Works asked that I replicate that process around the geothermal system. And the question we're tackling there is, how might we expand that geothermal system? Given that we have a goal to be carbon neutral by 2050, we have this amazing asset and renewable resource, the biggest and oldest municipal utility in the country that does geothermal. And so you can see a picture here of a co-creation session we held about a month ago in city council chambers with about 30 residents, which was really fun. People got excited about it. And we were able to generate more than 700 ideas from that. Some of them are really practical ideas, like how we can better market the geothermal system, how can we build awareness. Some of them were very bold and out there, like developing a downtown hot springs, using the geothermal system as a cooling system in the summer. And so now we're currently in the testing phase for that work, where we're testing a couple of the ideas. And actually tomorrow we'll be on 8th Street from 4 to 6 p.m. to gather feedback about one of those ideas. So folks should join if they'd like. But this work will complete at the end of the month, the end of February, and then we'll have some recommendations after that. And then finally, a third human-centered design project is really not a Kyle project. This was Biff Jones in the Department of Finance and Administration, who was part of the Bloomberg Harvard team and really liked the approach that we did. And so he brought it back to his department to tackle a challenge that they're facing around City Hall parking. Right now, on any given day, parking at City Hall is about half empty because so many of our staff are telecommuting. At the same time, we have a lot of staff who have to be in person working every day, who don't have access to a parking space. So they're paying for parking or walking 10 blocks. And often those are folks who tend to be the lowest paid folks in our organization, right? So there's an equity issue there as well. And so they're working really hard to pilot some ideas about how we could better utilize parking at City Hall to keep in mind the needs of staff. And that pilot will be done in a couple of months, and it's going really well so far. Next, around process innovation. So last fall, I pulled together a 5 cohorts of staff from different divisions, and you can see those divisions there, to get some training and coaching and process improvement. And those staff did more than 50 innovations through that work. I think one great example is the utility building staff. They have this thing called the move-in, move-out process. So anytime anybody in the city moves in or out of a house, they have to call our utility billing staff, and they're on the phone for an average of 15 minutes, providing information. So there's a lot of these calls every year. There's something like 15 or 16,000 of these calls a year. Well, they did some simple process improvements and process streamlining. It cost nothing. It was really easy. And through that, they were able to get that average call time down from 15 minutes to 8 minutes. So they almost cut that time in half, which is huge. So collectively over the course of the year, that saves our customers 1,900 hours of their time. It saves utility billing staff 960 hours of work, which is equivalent of like half an FTE, right? So basically for no money, they were able to add a half FTE for their staff and reduce their errors by 66%. On the performance analytics side, so I think we're all well aware that there's a deficit of affordable housing in our community, but one of the things we haven't always known is whether or not the market is producing those units that we really need. So I worked closely with planning and development services to start tracking that. What is the affordability level of all the units that are coming through the planning entitlement process? And you can see a dashboard here that we created to represent that. But I think one of the big findings that is really helpful as we're developing our housing initiative is that since March, there have only been 215 units of housing that are affordable that have gone through the planning entitlement process out of a total of 3,500, right? So a very small number. And of those 215, 210 of them were directly assisted by the city. So it's very clear to me from that data that type of unit is not going to get developed by the market unless the city intervenes. And that's a big part of our housing investment program. I've also worked quite a bit with the housing team on that performance management piece. So to develop a set of goals that they have and metrics and targets that they're using, and to measure progress over time. And this is another set of dashboards that I've worked with them to build to represent that. You can see there are 2 goals there, to develop 1,500 units of affordable housing in the next 5 years and preserve 1,000 units in the next 5 years. And this has been really helpful for us to track our progress. I also hired a Harvard fellow last summer to do some research for us around housing preservation, which we thought was a big need in the community, but we didn't know a lot about. It was really great research. It was really instrumental in the city developing that goal of preserving 1,000 units of housing. The fellow also provided a lot of great recommendations that we're exploring now. And then dashboards are a really great tool to be able to look at that data in a simple way, right? For any staff in the city to be able to look and see how we're doing. But unfortunately, a few staff right now in the city have the skills to build those dashboards. So I'm bringing in a trainer to do a 4-day training with analysts in our organization to develop that skill set. And as part of that, the analysts will be also developing some dashboards that will be used by the Economic Development Initiative and the Housing Initiative. And then finally, around open data, over the past year or so, we've launched a couple of tools for the public to use. One is Boise Open Book, which is a budget transparency tool. So any resident can see details about how the city spends their money, how they budget, et cetera. And then a couple of police dashboards we launched as well. So residents can look at police incidents in their neighborhood and emergency response time and things like that. So on the upcoming project side, I'm really excited about what we have going on over the next 6 months. I'm planning for 2 innovation challenges. So one would be organization focused, so trying to engage our staff in coming up with new ideas. And one of the values of that is getting those ideas. Another really important kind of goal of that is really to get staff engaged in our strategic initiatives, to make them feel like they're part of it and give them a way to be impactful in those initiatives. And then a challenge with the community as well, where we invite them to come up with ideas for how the city could improve. We'll do a second round of that process innovation work. On the performance side, I'm really excited to work on a housing data website, right? So we have all these dashboards now internally that tell us how we're doing, but we should be sharing that with the public as well. So we're working to develop a website that will do that and provide data to the public. Also developing some economic development dashboards. Of course, they have their strategic planning process that was complete recently, and that will show some of their goals and metrics. And then also developing some goal teams. The idea there is gathering staff together around, say, housing to look at the data on a quarterly basis and talk about how they'll take action to improve performance. So that completes my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kyle.
Madam Mayor. Well, thank you, Kyle. It's really great to hear this. And it's been a while since you presented to us. It makes me think that there are city council initiatives that could use your help. And I wonder if you guys have thought about, say, for instance, if the Vision Zero Task Force comes out with a set of recommendations, but we're not exactly sure how they'll get implemented, if that would be a candidate, if you will, for the crowdsourcing innovation.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, Council President, I think that's a great question. Definitely, I'd welcome a conversation about that. I'm truly trying to prioritize my time for the city's top priorities, right? Including those strategic initiatives like mobility. So I'd be happy to have that conversation. Thank you.
Well, Kyle, thanks for this presentation. We often joke, wait, where's Kyle? Oh, he's downstairs in that corner. What's he doing? Well, you're doing a whole bunch of stuff with a whole bunch of people. Really appreciate seeing it all in one place. And I know that from the employee experience, where we've, and under your leadership, pulled different people from different levels of the organization and from different departments themselves into these challenges, they've really enjoyed it. And as evidenced by the survey feedback you've gotten from residents and all the feedback you got, especially in the housing initiative questions, the public really enjoys it too. So look forward to seeing more of this and doing more of this, because it saves residents money, saves us time, and it creates opportunities for new ideas that can be great solutions.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it.
All right, with that, we will move into executive session if there's a motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that we go into executive session, personnel, land acquisition, records exempt from public disclosure, pending probable litigation, communication with risk management regarding pending probable claims, and labor contract, Idaho Code 74206 1B C D F I N J.
Second.
We have a motion, a second. Clerk, will you call the roll?
Willets.
Yes.
Woodings.
Yes.
Bajent.
Yes.
Clegg.
Yes.
Halliburton.
Yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. We will be back here at 6.